You're listening to Built to Convert, the podcast where growth-minded marketers, founders, and creators come to level up. No hype, no guesswork, just bold insights that drive results. Let's go.
All right, guys, welcome to Built to Convert, the podcast where we explore how strategy, analytics, and creativity come together to drive meaningful growth. I'm your host, Tyler Lane, founder of Session Interactive. In each episode, we sit down with marketers, founders, and operators who are building real momentum inside today's most interesting companies. This episode is brought to you by Session Interactive, the performance marketing agency for brands that are serious about growth. Whether you're in B2B, SaaS, DTC, e-commerce, or anywhere in between, we help marketing teams cut through the noise with smarter SEO, paid media, AI integration, analytics that actually drive revenue. Learn more at sessioninteractive.com. All right, Brennan Gilbert, we've got today, spent over a decade as an in-house designer at a late-stage startup, a variety of startups, before going fully independent in 2023 to found what is known as Counterweight, a design studio doing brand, art, direction, and front-end development out of Denver. Shout out Denver. He's built a reputation for having sharp, unfiltered opinions on where creative work is heading, particularly in the moment when AI is reshaping the economics of design from the bottom up. Today, we're going to jump into what brand actually does for a growth stage company and why most companies get it wrong. Brennan, good to see you, man.
Hey, you too, man. Thanks for having me on. What an intro. That was great.
Well, come on, you got an impressive background. Let's showcase that. Hey, what we like to typically do is just jump in to kind of establish some overview and some credibility in terms of what you've been doing. I think, as I mentioned, your background is quite impressive, and I love the transition that you did, working 10 plus years of kind of late stage startups, and then ultimately going independent in 2023. Let's talk about that. Let's unpack that. What was the desire? What was the ultimate push to say, like, I can do this and I'm going to pursue this full time by myself?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. I have been doing graphic design since before I knew that graphic design was a career you could do. So, yeah, it's something I've always been passionate about. And I think these days, especially with AI, I know that's its own topic, but I think people who actually care about the craft, care about what they're doing, they're the ones that will continue to see success. And so, yeah, I started in a kind of different path than a lot of creatives, where I think there's a lot of very ambitious creatives who jump off on their own. They got that entrepreneurial bug and they usually go the freelance route right away. Right. And I think that's great. I think if you're super talented, motivated, you know exactly what you're trying to do. That's awesome. That's true for CEOs across every industry. Right. But that's not everybody. And so I was much more like the Karate Kid sort of situation. I liked sitting next to marketing and salespeople, even though if you asked me at the time, I thought I was learning nothing, right? I'm like, this is boring. I don't want to do another deck. Sure. But spending close to 10 years across two different startups, like being elbow to elbow with sales leaders and C-suite and all those folks, that really is what set us apart when I decided to create the studio Counterweight. And that's where we got our name, right? Like, we balance out brands. We offset your creative. There's puns for days on that one.
Yeah, I know. I was going to ask you, actually. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say I've just always had a passion for it. I started in agencies. I went to startups, and after all of that, getting all that background, getting that wax on, wax off training, that's when I'm like, you know what? We can do this for people directly instead of just one company, where inevitably, I mean, the first one was 7 years, I got burnout. Second one was 3 years, I got burnout. I'm like, let's just do this on a faster timeline for a lot of people at once. And so, yeah, now we've been doing it for over 3 years now. So it's been cool.
That's awesome, man. Talk to me about kind of that evolution too, is, as you decided, but then going from a freelancer on your own to ultimately creating more of a robust, more of an actual agency. What was that transition like? When did you think where you're like, okay, I got something here and I want to build something, versus, I'm not saying freelancers don't build things, but I think more of an actual structured business entity?
Yes, sir. Yeah, my Venn diagram on paper is very much 50-50 between the business side and the creative side. All of my colleagues used to tease me. I'm like the only data-driven creative director that they knew.
Mm.
But business is how the checks get signed, right? As much as I love creative, as much as I love creativity, I think unfortunately in this world, it tends to get slighted compared to if you've got the title of CEO. And so, yeah, I just saw enough friends where, to your point, the traditional definition of freelancer is pretty one to one. They're the ones doing the work. They're the ones, and they don't give themselves enough credit because they're still running a business, right? They're
Totally.
still doing everything. They're still doing acquisition and leads and proposals and all that. But they usually, all the freelancers I know, they identify as I'm a freelancer. I like to do the work. And that's what I would do if I had like if someone was just passing them leads and all they had to do was creative, they would just do design all day long.
Mm.
And I maybe I'm just an old dog, but I've done this long enough where I'm like, I feel like I've designed a lot of the things that I really wanted to design, that I was itching to design, and now I think I'm at a stage in my career where I can grow better by helping others get to that solution as
Mm.
opposed to I always have to do it. And then the brass tacks. I mean, you're an entrepreneur yourself. I don't want to be so tied to my laptop that if the laptop's open, I'm getting paid, and if it's closed, I'm not. I wanted more of a business where I am able to step away and enjoy time with my family and do those sorts of things that when it's one to one and project based, it's just too up and down. The metaphors are everywhere in this world, right? But I
Yeah.
prefer net fishing as opposed to spear fishing every single week. So
Yep.
that was the main reason. It's like
I love that.
I was getting burnt out. I don't want to do this all
Yeah.
the time just to make my paychecks.
Well, you're bringing up some core concepts that resonate with me for sure. I think obviously the agency model versus trading time, right? You're only getting paid if you're working, right? I think that's something where, okay, let's evolve it where I'm actually, yeah, as you mentioned, spend time with your family, close that laptop and still be compensated, right? You still have other people working on just to fulfill those needs. And then I think the other one for me in particular was when I started out too as a contractor, consultant, freelance. It was I think it was I was constantly, oh, you're a freelancer. It's like, well, I'm actually a consultant, which again, like the naming convention is pretty much the same, but it felt like people would like kind of devalue and commoditize you a little bit if your naming convention was associated with freelancers. So I went with
Yeah.
consultant. That made me feel better, but who knows? Anyway,
Who knows, right? I mean, I
yeah,
know freelancers who kill it and they do a fantastic job and make all the money in the world. And I
sure.
know freelancers who are struggling. I know business owners who are struggling. I know business owners who are killing it. So it's tough, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's there's always grass is greener and always
The
a
grass is always
perception shift.
greener.
Let's transition here into kind of brand as a business layer, if you will, Brennan.
Sure.
So like B2B buyers will tell you that brand matters, and then obviously cut to budget immediately. Well, cut the brand budget immediately. You've been in rooms, of course, where that decision's being made or gets made. What's the actual argument that you think changes that in terms of how brand spend allocation is made? And hey, let's not cut that initially or right away. Let's work
Yeah.
on other areas to see what other things can be cut potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all heard the stats if you're in the business world, even if you're not on the creative side, for decades now, businesses who invest in design and brand and their identity tend to outperform statistically significantly over time, right? And you look at, I would say we are at an interesting inflection point, so I'll put a pause there. AI really has started to change things. But and AI plus the combination of the internet plus the combination of social, it's kind of a new frontier. But historically speaking, the Apples, the Disneys, the Googles, the people who really did invest in brand and arguably culture, right, at the center of those brands, they're the ones that have outperformed. And so historically, that's always been the go-to argument. If you want something quick, okay, sure. Make your logo on Canva. If you want something that's going to last, You need to invest because my buddy, I was talking with somebody recently where robots have been able to win at chess for a few years now, right?
Sure.
But people don't like to sit and watch a robot play a robot, right? They want to see people. And so I think that hopefully, hopefully that never changes. I think people still at the end of the day, like there's going to be industries, there's going to be sectors where people can get away with no brand. I think that's the reason I mentioned AI. These prediction markets, right? Poly market, what's the other one? Kalshi.
Kalshi, yeah, rings a bell. Yeah.
They arguably do not have brands. They've got a logo typed out in Helvetica. They've got a Poly market has a symbol that's just like 3 polygons. It is what you would get if you typed into AI, give me a logo for something with poly in it. And they're 2 of the biggest companies in the world, right? And so we are seeing this shift where I don't know. I'm constantly debating this, the value of quote unquote brand. I think your brand is still important. And I think it's a little more amorphous than it's ever been. It's not as simple as you need a logo and a visual identity. You just need you need an ecosystem that works across everything. And whether that's social or audio or visual, whatever it is, you got to make sure you're consistent. But the visual brand identity part, usually what people think of when they see I do design, that part is playing, I would say, still an important role, but a smaller role than it's played in the last 10, 20 years with startups.
Yeah. 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 Excellent point. I think me personally, right, I've always, not always, but for years devalued brand. I was like, what do brand marketers do? Or what is brand design? Yeah, we know we need it, but it's kind of, we'll check the box. And it's funny as my career evolved, just understanding the importance, the essential components of a quality brand and to maintain the brand and evolve the brand and how that correlates into all of the channel work that you're doing, the consistent messaging that you're mentioning, and how that is just such a key differentiator as we get into these saturated industries and certain things to really make.
Yeah, I mean, there's still, at the end of the day, the best brands are conveying trust, right? Like we've all been there. As soon as you have a negative interaction with a product or a service or something that you previously really loved, you are burned by it. You do not, you're very suspicious. And so again, brand identity will always be a really crucial part of building that trust, but it's not the only part,
Well, let's talk about the performance aspect a little bit about brand. Let's say, you worked on a brand engagement, you don't need to get into specifics of necessarily what was completed, but everyone was happy collectively. And then let's say campaigns were launched and the public and the sample size was generated in terms of people engaging with it. And let's say the outcome wasn't great. What would you say? Again, it's kind of broad, but what broke down? Whose problem is it? And what insights do you need to be able to glean to make necessary changes to improve things or right side the brand, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's cool about brand, and that's why I keep saying it's not going anywhere in terms of priorities for businesses that want to last. I don't know if this is oversimplification, but like a good brand is cool. People still resonate with something that feels authentic, genuine, sexy, interesting, like taps into those emotional sides of us being human. Right. And so even though AI is starting to automate the execution side of things left and right, these brands who really do care about performance and want to get ahead, they're the ones that are tapping into culture, into, is this cool? Is this something that I want to be a part of? And so to your point, when that ball gets dropped, right, and say a campaign flops, I would argue it always goes back to the core strategy. It always goes back to, did you really nail it with your demographics and your audience research and who you're actually trying to speak to?
Sure.
Because I would argue, again, there have been amazing campaigns throughout the ages that don't have any design, don't really care about that. Like, again, it's not surface level brand. It's like deep rooted brand, and those resonate. right? Versus the ones that maybe people put too much polish on something and they're trying to convince you it looks really sexy, but there's nothing there. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a cultural conversation and whether or not you're resonating from a
Sure.
strategic level,
Yeah.
regardless of, your visual assets.
Mm. And I think that's just, it stems from, or comes to mind of just the ongoing education. If they're
Yeah.
engaging with you or another creative, it's like, this is more than just a logo and more a typeface. There's a
Right.
story here we need to convey, and there's a story we need to continue to maintain and understand how we kind of a nimble aspect, and we're going to continue to evolve. So,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, one of the sectors we work a lot with is hospitality, food
Yep.
and bev. And
Nice.
that's really interesting, right? Because there's so much new wave social marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about throwing out the old playbook of what used to work. Restaurants these days are not getting successful by just doing a paid ad campaign that shows up on your grandmother's Facebook feed,
Yeah.
right? They're the ones who have and sometimes it's even accidental, right? I started following a guy recently. He's got those Meta glasses. He goes into a restaurant that looks like it's failing and he does a very thoughtful review. He interacts with them. It's very like feel good content, right? Like, oh, you're so nice. No, you're nice. Oh, thank you for bringing me an extra slice of bread, whatever it is. And then he has such a huge following that these restaurants get bombarded the day after and it
Cool.
changes their entire lives. But it's like, that's not traditional marketing. That's not the
No.
way you and I grew up thinking about what do you do to do marketing. It's like, that's some kid who liked to review restaurants and then got a pair of glasses and then went viral on TikTok a few times. And now he's got the magic touch where he just goes around. So I don't know. I think the way we think about how we even measure performance is so different
It
these
is.
days too.
Yeah. Yeah. Those KPIs in certain cases are still the same, but the prioritization around those, like, it reminds me of SEO, for example. Like, we were monitoring and continue to monitor, but fixating on impressions and clicks and keyword rankings and traffic. And now we're still monitoring those, but it's more around engagement within the site. Right. It's also never been more important. It always was, but conversions stemming from that channel and how it influences other channels too. So yeah, the evolution around KPIs, larger conversation, but yeah, really, really important in this AI age. Brennan, talk to me about front-end development. I don't think we see, well, that's not entirely true. I think there's definitely some shops that offer it, but more so they're going to fixate on creative production and brand strategy and are not going to get into front-end dev. Talk to me about how this approach with your agency has evolved and why you prioritize that.
Sure. Yeah. These days we say it pretty succinctly. We do the 3 Ds. We do design, direction, and development. Right. And so the dev part, I think for a modern business, especially we're talking April 2026, like if you don't have at least some digital presence, now again, that's changing as we speak, right? What that actual digital presence looks like is different for everybody. But that's kind of our catch-all for digital, right? Is dev. And I think a lot of people, even though we're seeing a few starting to not invest in websites in the way they used to, and even still, I mean, I'm curious on your side, SEO is changing rapidly with AI. But like, the giant 80-page website just to optimize for SEO from like 20 years ago, that's very different these days. And so for us, we just knew that in order to have a viable presence digitally, dev is such a big part of that. And, it can be as simple as a basic landing page. It can be as robust as these 80-page plus websites, right? You can do a blog. Again, it all comes back to what we've been talking about this whole time: culture, coolness, being genuine, being authentic. As long as it's, you're actually trying to resonate with your core audience in a way that makes sense. We have found that dev is a really important offering for modern studio because it's something that you can, I guess, said a different way. It's helpful to own at least one of your channels, right? And people are oversaturated with newsletters, but I still think for certain segments, it's a great thing. But like you own your website, you own your newsletter in a way that you never will on social media.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I mean, I think about our engagements and how, in certain cases, we're not developers, right? So we're entirely reliant on the brand, and how sometimes, the brand has got a ton of other competing priorities. So, if there's a brand that you're working with that has, it's going to let you develop and own that, there's a lot you can get done and expedite, versus, having to compete with other priorities of of internal development. So,
yeah, sure. Well, especially with these modern tools, right? Like I'm always on the fence with AI. I think there's some good stuff. I don't think there's anything amazing that came out of it that's worth the way it's destroying our planet.
sure.
But that's not my decision. I don't get to decide who gets
How
to
dare
fly
you?
into
How dare
space.
you?
I
Yeah.
know. Like that's not up to me. So, but like kind of these DIY era of tools, right? I think that's changed significantly too. You don't have to pay an entire dev agency hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a few updates to your site anymore. And so being able to empower people, like we use the platform Webflow. We love it for that very reason, right? Like it's very easy for us to go in, do what we need, but then pass off the keys and know that our client isn't going to completely just shoot themselves in the foot when we leave.
Exactly. Yeah, a really important piece. And you can kind of have a little bit more of the keys. The client still owns it, but yeah, you have the keys to update things and make a larger design changes a lot faster and usability improvements. Let's go back a little bit to kind of the performance aspects. We talked briefly about KPIs. I think with any business, right, to a certain extent, when a business is evaluating a partnership, like a design agency, for example, a brand agency, they are ultimately looking to get some level of return on investment, return on marketing investment, whatever that may be. How do you talk to clients about ROI when, even at the channel level, it's becoming even increasingly more difficult to attribute success because of large language models and other platforms that are confusing core analytic signals? Talk to me about how do you just, or not justify, but enter in that conversation, and what do you chat with clients about in terms of, hey, we need to see an ROI on this?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. It's something I think about a lot. And that's where I benefit from being in the middle of that Venn diagram between business owner and creative. I can still put on the creative hat and say, you know what? I'm a creative guy. We don't measure everything. Right. I fully lean into when it's beneficial for us to show numbers and we can confidently do that, we will. And then when we can't, I can say, hey, not everything in life is measurable. So the way that we enter that with our clients, we do a lot of brand identities, and we just straight up say up front, there will be some things that we will not be able to 100% attribute to this exercise.
Sure.
Right. And that's just the way that it is. Right. I think a recent cultural example was, did you see this little Finder guy online from Apple? They had done their big keynote recently. Their little Finder icon on the Mac has been the same for years. It's a little face.
Yes, of course. Yep.
One of their creative people just decided to turn it into a little mascot and make it this little guy. And had that been pitched from the perspective of, we're going to guarantee ROI on this, we're going to see a 20% uptick in these channels, it never would have gone out. But instead, a creative was like, I think this is kind of funny, we should throw this into a keynote. And it blew up. Like it just became this huge thing. And so I like to point to examples like that because, again, we have the occasional prospect who reaches out and says, like, we want exact numbers. What can you do for us? And I say, thank you for your time. We'll pass you to somebody else. Because there are just innately in creativity, there are some things that are immeasurable, right? You know it when you see it. And so when we can point to metrics, it is like we work on campaigns, we work on websites, we work on things that in and of themselves can be measured. But the core art of design and creativity, a great logo, you're not really going to know until a few years later whether or not that performed based off of our KPIs. And so we just try to work with clients who understand that it's a fine balance, and we will help you measure and work towards some things and be able to help you prove that. And other things, you're just going to have to trust us as the experts in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's tough too sometimes when you're getting so much positive feedback from potentially from a client, and they're like, "That's great. That's essentially your indication of what's successful." But ultimately, what does the public think, right? What's their ICP feel about how the brand is taken and improved upon and changed? So I think that it's almost like it's trying to solicit survey data or getting kind of real human input back in terms of, are you finding this more helpful? Is more aligned to trust signals and other things? So,
well, and that's why, I mean, in the same way that y'all don't necessarily do creative in-house, we don't do marketing and performance in-house, right? Like, we like to partner with our chosen experts who can really put a fine point on all of that. But at the end of the day, we are a creative studio, and we focus on, aesthetics are still a part of our job, even if they're not the whole job. So, yeah.
You mentioned those 3Ds. I guess when you take a look at brand strategy, front end dev, art direction, things like that, some of those, I mean, those are entirely separate focus areas in certain cases, but are incredibly helpful when they're brought together. How do you structure the work without being fragmented and stating that, we want to fixate, we know this client needs a lot more direction, but we've got a development project we got to get through. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, we very purposefully position ourselves as a boutique agency, because by being small, by only working with a handful of clients, never growing to a point where we're doing 100 things at once, we are able to give that white glove service to our customers. And so, to your point, on paper, for someone who knows what that stuff is, it can feel like it could be potentially fragmented.
Sure.
We work with a lot of entrepreneurs and teams where, okay, they do understand that stuff, but like, all they need to know when they work with Counterweight is we've got you, right? And so that helps ease those fears. Like, yes, between you and I and your audience on this podcast, we do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. We are constantly switching between those buckets. And that's one of the biggest things on my side, is keeping the ship pointed in one direction while we're doing all of these things. But the client never sees that chaos. They always see this one consistent direction. And okay, this week we're going to focus a little more on strategy. Next week we'll focus a little more on design. After that, we'll do dev. Even if, again, behind the scenes, we're doing one all across the board all the time. We just don't really pull back the curtain on that too often.
Got it. Okay. That makes total sense. I'd love to hear a little bit around the kind of relationship that produces the best work out of you guys. Not necessarily the most revenue, but just like the stuff that you're most proud of. Or is that one and the same, most revenue and best work? Or how does that work out typically? What type of intangibles or characteristics are you looking for your particular client base?
Sure. We, again, at the end of the day, we still like to work with people who value creativity. I know out the gate, when I am vetting new partnerships for us, it's kind of what we were saying before. If this person is just automatically like, what can you do for me? I talk a lot about, like, we are not a vending machine. If you are looking for a vending machine where there's this nice, pretty thing, you can poke in a few inputs, wait, and then just get this thing all done, like, that's not us. We want people who want to roll up their sleeves. They want to be collaborative. They want to feel invested in whatever this output is, right? We do all kinds of different projects, but that's the consistent thread across all of them, is like people who are invested in that output and feel like on the brand side, especially, our biggest goal is, like, I tell our clients all the time, we are just holding up a mirror. When we do our jobs right, we are just reflecting the best version of you. Sure, we'll help you with makeup, we'll help you with lighting, we'll help to make sure that the final thing feels like it's exactly what you hope for on your headshot. but it's still you at the end of the day. So
It is.
people who
Yeah.
are interested in participating in that process, we love working with them. The people who are very uninterested in that process and just kind of they want an order taker, we are typically not right for that kind of partnership.
Yep. No, it's good. And I think good on you to just be able to delineate that and separate those and lead with kind of that honesty and transparency of like, this is just not going to be a fit for us, or potentially it can be a really
And
good fit.
it doesn't always relate to the revenue side, to your point, but we
No.
would rather work with good-hearted people for free, right? Than someone who's willing to pay us $1 million and they're kind of a jerk to work with.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. We got this whole thing called life we got to live, and hopefully we want to deal with people that are,
Yeah, exactly.
that are decent. Let's transition into this acronym that you've never heard of, AI. This is my classic.
Adobe Illustrator.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, let's talk about Illustrator. So, you've had some really some obviously a lot of opinions in terms of AI, and you and I were talking right before we started hit a record around the level of authenticity that people are likely going to fixate on, and definitely a lot of use cases, but ultimately there is a level of human element that comes into a play that's as a necessity. I mean, we see it across the board. We've tried to automate certain things in our process for paid media and analytics and SEO, and it gets there, but the output requires an individual with experience and to review and essentially call bullshit on certain things. I'm curious, just your take around, what exactly is commodity creative work for you, and what's left if AI handles that, and is it,
Sure.
Is that just, it's weeding out, as we discussed, kind of the junior creatives, where is it heading, and what is the value, and what is the kind of the drawbacks that you're seeing?
I think, I think it's Pandora's box. It's been opened. It's never going to be put back, no matter how much of, again, I don't love it. I recognize there are some areas that it's valuable. And frankly, there are areas that we leverage it ourselves, but it's just such a mixed grab bag of everything. And to say that it's either all bad or all good, I think that's a little short-sighted. In terms of the commodification of a lot of what we do, the production side is getting automated left and right. By which I mean, if you do a whole new brand identity, right? The brand is your nucleus of your business. Visually, people think about it as their logo, but it's your mission, it's your values. It's why do you get out of bed in the morning? Why are you excited about this? That translates to why is your audience excited about what you're doing? Why are they willing to write you a check, right? And then on our side with the brand identity, the visuals, that translates to logo and type and colors. I think a lot of people are trying to use AI to build out their brands, and it's just a different tool to do the same thing we've always seen since the invention of graphic design. There are people who want the cheapest solution, the easiest solution, and their business reflects that, right? The reality is if you're, again, restaurants are on my mind because we just saw a lot of examples recently online related to this. This poor woman, I'm not saying that she deserved to be completely dragged online in the way that she was, but she used AI for her logo. She got dragged. People really went on all of her social profiles and just and people, the internet mob, people were unnecessarily mean. They had never even been to the restaurant. It's like, okay, all right. I don't like the logo, but I'm not going to go leave a 0-star review for some Minnesota restaurant I've never been to.
Totally.
But the reason people got so upset, and we're seeing this across industries, it just indicates, okay, if you only want to spend $5 for your logo, what am I eating in your burgers? What actually is worth caring about in your business? And so that stuff, the really important stuff, I don't think that will be touched for a long time. Even if it is, we'll still see people care about it and want to prioritize and pay for it. But again, the production side, the campaign already exists, the logo already exists. We have a general vibe. We need to now create 80 variations of this ad in different languages. I'm actually all for automation and AI on that side. I think with my team, we very frequently internally discuss this. And our rough rule of thumb is anything that a human is happy and excited and interested to do, go ahead and still do that. Anything that you hate doing and you think a robot could automate it, do that. And so for us, we don't use AI for image creation, logo, anything that's graphical that we're outputting, but production, variations, automations, like that sort of stuff. Where it's like, again, someone literally like me, I need to go in and make 5 versions of this same exact ad and just manually move this image from the top left to the bottom right. No, I don't think we need to. Now, again, without AI, we were doing that. We could have continued to do that. And I think I just wrote about this recently. A lot of juniors are going to have a much, much, much harder time getting their foot in the door because that's the work they were doing. Right. And so when you're not given that opportunity to learn on the most basic stuff and you're expected to be an expert on day one, I think that's going to completely shake up our whole industry. But I don't have a solution for you. Again, like it's out there. It's going to keep replacing production work, whether or not we agree that it should.
Yeah, no, really great point. And it is a bit worrisome to individuals that are coming up and are excited and are passionate, but they need to start. It reminds me of like a line cook. You're starting there and before you become a sous chef, and then before you become an actual chef, you got to pay your dues. And we've all done that, you and I, in varying respects, and we've learned by doing. It reminds me a lot to a certain extent of like, we'll have AI summarize the data and conduct insights, and it's like, well, you need that level of manual review to familiarize yourself with the data and to understand exactly what's happening versus AI spitting out, and you really have no idea, where things are being collected or how it's being distributed.
I mean, I'm just grateful that you and I, like a lot of my buddies, like we're over that hump, right? Like we are lucky to be in the time that we're at as experts in our field. And you're the same way. I feel like you, Tyler, me, Brennan, the internet could go out and we probably could still get through 60-70% of what we need to get done today, right? Because we know how to do it. We know the fundamentals. And I think these days, people just aren't given that opportunity to learn those fundamentals.
Sure.
And if all the robots are taking the intern jobs, but then they can't ever evolve past intern, then I don't know. I don't know what the solution is to get these senior talented people through the doors, Yeah,
it'll be interesting too. I mean, I think your use case is spot on in terms of the production work. It really reminds me too of, and your comment around just what we want to do versus what we don't want to do kind of thing. And it reminds me of how we tee things up around how we build out and integrate AI for our teams internally, but also for our clients around, what is the mundane, repetitive, remedial work? And that's recurring. And, that's usually a great use case to get the process started. But you got to train these things up, right? I think that's another thing is people just jump in and have a free version of this or that. And it's like, no, you got to commit. So,
and in my world, we talk a lot about the impact on the market, the impact on the audiences, the people who normally would hire us. Like that's an unfortunate decline that, again, we're not going to see go away anytime soon, because the average person who doesn't know the difference between a great logo and a bad logo, right? Like they don't know why this AI logo is getting so much hate. In their mind, it's like, what do you mean you were able to just type something into a magic robot and it spit out this beautiful illustration of an otter? It's like, okay, well, it's very cringy, but it's because I know what I'm looking at, right? And like a lot of people don't. And I do think if everything's a bell curve, if everything's this different pockets of the audiences, the buyers, we will continue to see a tightening of the people who really want to prioritize, and we'll see a widening of the people who don't really care. But hopefully the pendulum swings back the other way, because again, I think, we're already starting to see that backlash.
I think we are. I mean, listen, I don't want to. I mean, we're two guys, right? But in terms of the sample size, but thinking about like watching a AI generated series doesn't seem compelling to me, so anyway, that's one small example. All right, let's get you out of here. But this has been super, super helpful, Brennan. I love your perspective and the level of transparency and honesty you're able to share. Let's say if you were starting Counterweight today, I know it's a few years old at this point. With everything what would you do differently in the first 90 days? What do you think? What are some of those foundational items that you change?
I benefited from investing in a business coach last year. And while not everyone's in a position to be able to do that, I was glad that I prioritized that. And I think just doing the actual proper way of setting up a business, that was really, really crucial. Again, in my world, there's so many creatives who I'm going to freelance and I'll figure everything else out later. It's like, if you can figure out the benefits of an S Corp and setting up a proper QuickBooks up front, that's going to save you nightmare much, much later on in your business. Totally. So that's a simple example, but I think if I were starting again tomorrow, I would get everything ship shape right away instead of saying I'll get to it later.
Yeah, it reminds me. I used to think I wanted to be a designer and realized I was not great at it. It reminds me of just taking the time with anything. Right, this is applicable, but I was just like I would jump right into Photoshop when I should have just ideated a little bit outside of the tool. And I think that's a similar. Reminds me of how a lot of people start from freelance. It's like we're just going to focus on the work, right? The business stuff will come. That's whatever. But it's like those are foundational details you got to iron out before you get things rolling. So
right, and the difference between like running a business and happening to luck out on a few projects is very, very different.
Exactly. Yeah, great distinction there. Brennan, great to see you, man. I really appreciate your time. Where can people interact with you? Where can they find out more information? Social platforms, website? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I am old enough where I've got Brennan Gilbert on basically everything. So you can find me there. And then anything with our studio, I'm still a personality brand. So usually nothing's coming out from the studio that's not just posted by me and blinded as the studio. So I would say Brennan Gilbert I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn most frequently.
Cool. Awesome. Well, again, really appreciate your time. People go reach out and engage with Brennan. He's got some great opinions and I love the content you push out, man. So thanks again.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to Built to Convert. If you're serious about growth, don't just listen. Subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for new episodes that drop straight into your feed. Until next time, keep building.